Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
What's going on, the BBs? I'm Siraj Hashmi.
I'm Mujahed Kobbe.
And we're the Habibi Bros. Welcome to another episode of the Habibi Power Hour. Jay, a little different today. Feels, I don't know how else to explain everything that's happened today. It still feels like a shock, but at the same time, I guess we should have expected this happening.
Right.
But let's get into it. We're actually we are honored to bring on Batya Ungar-Sargon. I'm pronouncing that correctly, right?
Totally.
Well, Batyabibi. We'll just call it Batyabibi at this point. She is the deputy opinion editor at Newsweek and also the author of the upcoming book. You're gonna hate me because I forgot already.
Bad news. How woke media is undermining democracy.
And before we get into the news of the day, just as a quick teaser, how is it undermining democracy?
Because I argue that the mainstream national media has abandoned the working class and has sort of leaned into increased polarization of an economic nature. And basically, by deplatforming the entire working class and leaning into all of the power and all of the platforms belonging to the elites, we've essentially become a kind of new oligarchy, and that is anti-democratic.
100%. Sorry, Batya. I'm not sure. She said essentially. So, rules of the show, Batya. Anytime you say one of us says essentially, the other one has to say 100%, and we take a drink. Anytime someone says 100%, the other person has to say essentially, and we take a drink. So, I'm still
L'chaim.
recovering.
L'chaim. No, and he always cheats. He always drinks water while I drink like a bottle of bourbon every episode.
I mean, it is, you deserve it. You absolutely, essentially 100% deserve it. Yeah. Anyways, Habibs, we're glad you could join the show. Glad you could be a part of this. Long overdue. We had a bit of a mix-up, Batya, last time. And I'm going to blame Jay 100%.
Essentially. I mean, I do deserve the blame. To be honest, I totally forgot. I'm really, really sorry. We had it on for Friday, and I told her at 9, and she's like, yeah, that's great. And then she's like, wait a minute, are you up that early to be up at like 6 a.m. your time? I'm like, first of all, I'm not Siraj. I am up at 5:30 every morning. And second, you're Jewish. That's right. You guys disappear on Friday nights. I totally forgot it.
Yeah, that was totally my bad. I assumed you meant 9 a.m. But anyway, I'm so honored to be here, you guys. I love you both. I love your show. I love your Twitter feeds. I can't think of anybody who makes me laugh as much as Mujahed. So I'm so stoked to be here.
Thank you so much for joining.
Wait, just Mujahed? Oh, I'm.
No, you're good too. You're good too.
and he walks out. He walks out of focus.
I can't
listen, the list is canon. The list is canon, but I do tell people every time I meet them about one of Mujahed's tweets, which literally every time I think about it, it makes me laugh. Do you know which one I'm thinking of?
No, which one?
There was an image of I don't remember what it was. It was like a cartoon of a plane landing kind of into a house or flying into a house. And you tweeted, "This is cultural appropriation, and I will not stand for it."
I think it was a screenshot from the flight simulator, right? It was on one of my older accounts. Yeah, unfortunately.
Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's one of the better ones. It was either that cultural appropriation or the classic "my culture is not your goddamn problem."
Yeah, it was one or the other. Unfortunately, I can't archive my old accounts when they die. It's unfortunate.
R.I.P. For those of you who are not aware, Jay is on his 14th Twitter account. That is how many times he's been banned by Senor Jack Dorsey. And it's largely become come from Jay calling Brian Stelter. What is that, Jay? What do you call him?
Well, I called him a little bitch clown, and that got me one of the times. And then the other time, I was giving him advice. So basically, I was telling him to stop being or acting like a $2 whore, and that got me banned off of my Branson Taylor. R.I.P.
That was Aaron Rupar, right?
No, Aaron Rupar got me suspended for like for 7 days, and then I got back and I came back hard. And Brian Stelter is the one that got me banned.
Oh man. So Batya, before we kind of get into the more serious stuff, let's start off a little light. What has sort of led you down this path to where you are? Why is it that you became a journalist? Not necessarily what got you to Newsweek, but what kind of got you into the political fold?
Okay, so I was getting my PhD, and I started to notice something about myself, which was that every time some article came out on the subject of my PhD, I would be sitting there like literally like praying and hoping that it was either stupid or wrong, because if it was smart or right, I was going to be out of a job. Like basically you spend 7 years writing a book, right? And your whole career depends on like this book being a success, you know, your dissertation. And if somebody scoops you or gets there before you, like you're basically finished. And so I started to feel like the whole atmosphere of academia was sort of stacked against intellectual honesty. Like I couldn't sit there like hoping that my colleagues were like really smart, smarter than me, you know, get like coming up with like really smart ideas that were even better than mine, because then I would literally not have a job. And that started to like really bother me. And you couple that with the fact that, so I was getting a PhD in literature. And basically, you're like working on books that people have been working on for 400 years, right? For 400 years, really smart people who are smarter than you, have been saying things about these books, right? So like the things that are true about these books have pretty much already been said, right? But you still have to say something, right? You still have to write a book, right? So basically, like you have to make something up. Like you have to come up with something original, right? And it's probably not going to be correct, because all of the correct things have been said by all of the smarter people who have lived before you for 400 years. And that started to bother me as well. I was like there's literally no way to have this job and to just be like, oh, actually, like that literary critic from like 1875 actually got it right. Like this is probably what the author meant, right? If you say that, you kind of have no career. And so I started to feel a little bit like academia, at least the humanities, or at least like the humanities that I was a part of, was sort of like very I don't want to say anti-intellectual, but like there was no way to truly do like falsifiable things, or like to follow what you thought was correct and true. Like the career in a way was sort of like at intention with being intellectually honest. And so that was sort of percolating in my mind. And at the same time, I started reporting a little bit, just kind of, I was like living in New York. I was writing my dissertation. I was teaching at CUNY. And I was like, okay, I just like, for a not very interesting reason, wrote an article and then wrote another article. And suddenly it was like, oh my God, people are actually reading these articles and talking about them. And like, there was like literally no going back after that to like writing like this, like, 300-page book that 6 people would read, so that's kind of how it started.
This is why Jay and I prefer the short form literary medium of Twitter, in which you can write whole poems about ass eating and get 800,000 retweets and likes.
No, but I will say something very interesting about that, which is like, that's very funny, Siraj, because you're also very funny. I just want to say that again.
Stop that.
A very funny joke.
I heard you the first time.
But on Bridget Fedesi's amazing podcast a couple weeks ago, she had Matt Taibbi on, and he made this really good point that like, so the New York Times put all of this work into this huge piece about Trump's tax returns, right? And that didn't even impact the news cycle for longer than maybe it was 12 hours, right? But you can write a tweet and that will make a news cycle that goes for like a whole week, right? And so like now journalism is sort of like becoming extremely anti-intellectual, extremely like, it's just weird, right? It's like weird that you can put all this journalistic effort into something and it will not actually impact the conversation. But these tweets we write suddenly, like, and that's happened to me, it's not great. It's kind of weird, but on that topic,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's like that meme of people on Twitter, like the dumb people on Twitter are using words like henceforth, and then the smart people on Twitter are saying, "My dog is a thick boy." Like that is Twitter discourse, and I am 100% guilty of it.
Yeah.
Essentially. Oh my God, I'm already done with my drink.
Good, Jay. Let's get you nice and drunk and blacked out.
It's happened once before, just once, and he always puts it over me.
I'd be definitely holding it over him. So, we'll talk a little bit more about your story in a little bit, but we got to obviously address the news of the day, and obviously a very shocking affair happening in Afghanistan as a suicide bomber. I believe there are 2 explosions in Kabul, right outside the airport, Hamid Karzai International Airport. And as far as we know, it was 12 U.S. service members were killed. About 15 other were wounded. And then dozens of Afghan civilians were killed and wounded. If I could get the exact numbers, give me one moment. Oh, it's 13 U.S. military personnel who were killed. And then at least 60 Afghans, at least 60 Afghan civilians were killed as well. And it is ISIS-K, which I guess is some Afghan affiliate of the Islamic State, claimed responsibility for the attack. It's the first time since February 2020 that American service members have been killed in Afghanistan. Apparently, ISIS-K is also short for Islamic State Khorasan. I don't know if that is a play on Star Wars, like Coruscant, but it is either way, nonetheless evil. Jay, this is obviously very shocking, and we'll get into sort of like all the horrific takes that we've seen today. But before I kick things to Batya, Jay, what were you kind of like your immediate reaction to all of this?
That it was really unfortunate and sad that it happened. We kind of had a feeling that something like this could happen, especially because of how horrible the whole situation was going from the get-go. From the day they were withdrawing until now, we were very lucky that we haven't seen these type of death tolls happening earlier than what's happening right now. And I think it's only going to get worse from now. I don't think it's going to get better. And it shows the complete lack of planning and coordination that was supposed to happen for this withdrawal. I think it's from top down. It just shows complete incompetence, in my humble opinion, that I think Biden botched the whole thing up, and the people he has talking to him about it did so as well. And I think a lot of takes where they're saying that they really wanted a photo op about we're right on the cusp of the anniversary of 9/11, and they really wanted to win for it and for Biden. And I think they went a little bit too quickly, and they wanted to do it, and they botched the whole thing from day one.
Batya, you've actually been getting a lot of flack in the last couple of days, maybe in the last week, about sort of your takeaway on this. And let me just bring this up. So first of all, President Biden gave he addressed the nation, took a few questions. He was asked by a reporter if he bear responsibility. And let me just play that clip for you, very short.
Do you bear any responsibility for the way that things have unfolded in the last 2 weeks?
I bear responsibility for fundamentally all that's happened of late. But here's the deal. I wish you'd one day say these things. You know as well as I do that the former president made a deal with the Taliban that he would get all American forces out of Afghanistan by May 1. In return, the commitment was made, and that was a year before. In return, he was given a commitment that the Taliban would continue to attack others, but would not attack any American forces. Remember that?
So that was President Biden taking a question from Fox News reporter Peter Doocy. And I bring up this tweet from you, Batya, which you were getting a little bit of, getting a little heat from. And you wrote, the definition of leadership is making difficult decisions others are too scared to, and being willing to take responsibility for the fallout. President Biden is showing true leadership, and I pray this is the end of America's disastrous nation building. May God protect our troops. Now, we live in a very polarized society, and most people think you're probably simping for President Biden. But I would like to give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you are just an optimistic individual, and I give you credit for trying to remain optimistic. And look, I'm with you. I'm with you in the sense that I want President Biden to be successful, because if the president is successful, then America is successful. Right now, I don't think he's being very successful. But I want to get your take. What's been going through your mind, and how you've been viewing this?
So I don't mind being told that I'm simping for Biden. You know, all through the Trump presidency, when I thought that President Trump was being covered unfairly, I would say so, and people would say those are right-wing talking points, and I'd be like, you could call it whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not really afraid of other people's designations of where I fall. I don't know exactly what simping means, but I think that President Biden deserves a lot of respect. I just don't know what the word means, but
no, it's whether. I'm sorry, that term might have been a little bit too new wave, too millennial, too Gen Z, but let's just say you're cheerleading for Biden.
I am. I think he deserves a lot of admiration and respect. I think he did something that many presidents failed to do, or didn't have the courage or the guts to do. And the thing that disgusts me the most right now is seeing President Trump's officials who cheerleaded him making a deal with the Taliban and are now out there like condemning Biden for following through on it because Trump was too much of a coward to face down this kind of censure. And I think that Biden made a really difficult decision. I think this war was a mistake to begin with. And I think ending wars is always going to be, especially wars you've lost, is always going to be messy and terrible. And to me, like the bombing today, this is a thing that really depresses me, though. Like, I was sure, like, so 2 weeks ago, when this started, I was like talking to friends who, like, they all disagreed with me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Every single day that has passed, I have been like, surely they're going to call me today and be like, okay, we see it from, you know what I mean? This proves your point. But of course not. Of course, they feel the same way. Like, everything that happens only proves that they're right, that Biden botched this from the beginning, that there should have been a troop surge, that there was somehow some way to get all the civilians out before getting the troops out. Like, so it's very depressing to me. Like, not only, like, I've been taking a lot of flack. I feel like there's been wall-to-wall media coverage so I watch Fox News and CNN, both of them all day. I have them both on so I can follow how the conversation is developing. And they've been interchangeable for the last 2 weeks, So, like, to me, it's like that. So that's very depressing. Like, and I don't quite understand it. I mean, I did write an op-ed about it, but I have to admit, like, here, like, I'm not sure I quite cracked the code of like why there's like this wall-to-wall bipartisan censure. Like, I thought, 3 weeks ago, if you had asked me how this was going to play out, I would have said the MAGA right would be fighting to take credit for it, and the anti-war left would be like, no, Biden's our guy, and it's just been the exact opposite. And I have to say, I know the facts. Like, I know what you'll tell me about like what was botched and what could have been done better, but I also know that I have answers to every single one of those things, and I don't understand why your facts are not more compelling to me and mine are not more compelling to you. Like, I feel very undone by this, like that this is sort of actually a media story that I don't quite understand. What do you guys think?
So I'm curious. So you said one part of your answer that kind of stuck out with me is the fact that you said we should have never gone into Afghanistan to begin with. Is that what you mean? So in the fallout of 9/11, the United States wasn't justified in going to take out Al Qaeda in Afghanistan.
I mean,
am I hearing that correctly?
Well, we lost the war, right? We started a war that we lost. I mean, doesn't that show that it was sort of misguided to begin with? And here's another thing I'll just say, and I want to keep talking about that aspect because I think it's really important. But
Sure.
people keep saying, "What about the women of Afghanistan?" Right? Like, what's going to happen to them now? They're going to have all their rights curtailed, and like, so whatever you think about whether the Taliban is going to be this new and improved, like Taliban 2.0, who are like less extreme or whatever, I happen to think that $9 billion of their money in the Federal Reserve is actually a really good insurance policy to sort of hold that over their heads. But okay, I don't need to give them the benefit of the doubt. But people keep saying, "Oh, we're abandoning all these women." Like, honestly, my heart breaks for these women. I've cried multiple times, like thinking about that. But at the same time, like, I can't help but wonder, like, okay, the ideal scenario, right, is the scenario in which September 11th never happened, right? That we can all agree that's the ideal scenario. In that scenario, the Taliban never left, right? So those women were sex slaves anyway, and none of them had an education. Everything was really terrible for them. And in the second best case scenario, right, is that like September 11th happened, and we went to the Taliban and said, "Give us Osama bin Laden." And they were like, "Oh, sure, no problem. Here he is," right? In which case, the Taliban still never left, and those women never had any freedoms, right? So, like, the idea of tying that to some sort of like success on America's part, like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like nothing that we did as a response to September 11th was supposed to involve like and the third point I'll make, and then I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this, is like, to me, like, the question of sovereignty is extremely important and has been like totally left out of this. Like, something I really appreciated about President Trump was like, okay, obviously he was a nincompoop. He didn't think this through. But what he represented in this America First anti-war thing was the idea that like sovereignty as an idea is extremely important. Like what a nation makes of itself, like you don't have rights unless you have a relationship with a government where they govern by your consent, right? The consent of the governed, democracy, like that's the only thing that can ensure a right. It's a contract you make as a body politic with the government. The women in Afghanistan never had that. They had occupation protected privileges, let's say, okay? Like there was an occupying force that was saying, you can't treat women that way if we're going to be here, right? That's not a right. And in terms of sovereignty, like we just had no business being there. Like I don't understand like what justified us being there, especially after Osama bin Laden was already killed. Like, what was the justification? Like at that point, it just became this like fruitless nation building that I'm sure we can all agree was like a mistake. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm with you on. So like when the Afghanistan papers being released in
Right.
either late 2019, early 2020, obviously before COVID broke.
Yeah.
I'm still of the position that we should have left Afghanistan. I think it is I'm hoping it's an overall net positive for the United States to have left Afghanistan, because while we only had 3,000 troops there, I could see the benefits to being there and the negatives to leaving. The benefits to being there still is that 3,000 troops apparently is enough to deter the Taliban from taking over. We may have had 300,000 Afghan National Army troops trained, but that collapsed immediately. I don't know if you've seen any of the training videos. They are completely inept, incapable. They just do not have the sort of like that drive, that would motivating factor to want to defend their nation, defend their government from the brink of collapse from a Taliban takeover. Now, I can understand. I think one of the things that we're probably getting lost in the weeds on, and probably gets lost in the conversation, is the fact that we've called it a 20-year war. Mm-hmm. We've had 3,000 troops there since when? Like 2019, maybe? When was the last drawdown? I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to rely on one of the Habibis to tell me. But basically, 3,000 troops is nothing. We have more troops in Bahrain than we did in Afghanistan before the withdrawal these last couple of weeks. We have more troops in South Korea. We have like 26,000 in South Korea, and we have like somewhere around 40,000 in Germany.
But we
don't call those wars.
Okay,
yeah,
okay. Can I ask you something? You don't buy the argument that so obviously there's a huge difference between being in Afghanistan and being in South Korea, right? Like,
Right. Absolutely.
okay. So you don't buy the argument that the reason there have been no US military deaths since February 2020 is because Trump made a deal with the Taliban? You don't think that that's correct?
No, I'm not refuting that at all.
Okay, so because if you agree with that, like it actually was a dangerous place for US troops to be, even when there was like 3,000 of them there. Like it was a risky place for them to be until we made this agreement to leave, right? Like there were still people coming home in body bags.
Right,
So
absolutely.
right. So in that sense, it was like, yeah, maybe it was enough to deter the Taliban, but I think to me that to me, President Biden is the guy who has ended every speech of his political career by saying, like, not God bless America, which is like the sort of standard, but God bless the troops, God protect the troops, right? That's kind of his sign off. And I think he said it in his first speech earlier this week, like, how many more sons and daughters would you have me send over there to fight a war that the Afghanis don't themselves want to fight? And so I think it's like, if we take into account that it was still a place where American service members were going to die, like, is keeping the Taliban out of that country, like, worth a single American life? And I just feel sort of like, no, no, what's our, like, why is that our, and I think, and I'm very curious what you guys think about this. Like, to me, what we're seeing now with ISIS-K is like, how fundamentally at odds the Taliban sees its objectives from the objectives of a group like ISIS-K, right? Like the Taliban now is sort of invested in this, so like that they want to do nation building, or they need to prove to people that they can govern, right? Like they are at war with ISIS-K, right? Like, so the idea that they are likely to now harbor ISIS fighters when like they're now starting this whole conflagration between them, I just feel like that's kind of not likely. But what do you guys think?
Jay, let's get Jay get in here.
Well, I think there's two arguments to be made that's going on right now. One is like, should we still be in there? Should we be nation building? Should we do any of these aspects of it? And I don't think that the cost of being in Afghanistan after these, I want to say since 2011, 2013, have been as bad or as much as people wanted to make it out to be. Now, being out of there, sure, that's great. How we got out of there, this is the real issue that people are talking about right now. And that's the real issue that is at hand, that is happening. He always wants to blame Trump for this deal he made with the Taliban. Like he has never torn up policies or things that the Trump administration has made before. And not only that, it was a May 1st deadline. He pushed it back. So he has no problem in stepping on policies or plans or deals that were made by the previous administration. That is such a deflection. And I think he has shown zero leadership when it's come to this. When every time you hear something bad happening, some news going on, he comes to do his speech, blames everything on everyone else, and says the buck stops with me. And then he blames every single person. He blames the Afghans who are dying. He's blaming the last administration. He's blaming the Afghan government. He's blaming all of these things. And then he says the buck stops with me. And then he walks away with no answering zero questions, zero. And today, I think it was one of the most shameless things that I've seen him do since he took in office. He came in and started talking about his son. We hear about his son all the time. His son, God rest his soul.
Jay,
look, I'm saying it was a huge deflection. A huge deflection. And he was trying to buy sympathy. He was trying to buy sympathy points.
Jay. Look, anytime, look, I get it. I get what you're trying to say. But I think when it comes to Joe Biden talking about his own family, he has every right and every license to talk about his deceased son. It is what I think is the most relatable thing about him, is the fact that he is someone, while he may not be a great president, he seems like at the very least a loving father. I mean, even just looking at the Hunter Biden laptop, even the conversations that Joe was having with his son Hunter, who is going through it, that is something that I think look. You and I are both not Jay. You and I are both not parents. We don't have kids, at least that we know of.
I haven't gotten someone's mom's pregnant from eating ass yet. It hasn't happened.
Jesus Christ. Anyways, we don't know what it's like to invoke or talk about what it's like having a child, and let alone having that child die from something as horrific as brain cancer. Now, did he have to invoke his son, Beau Biden? He didn't have to. Did it at least help soften the blow of everything that's wrong with his proposal or his policy or implementation of withdrawal from Afghanistan? Not so much. But did it get comfort to those who probably needed it the most? I don't know. Maybe. Might have moved the needle a little bit. All I'm saying is it makes him more human, and that's what we don't need. We don't need Joe Biden to be reading from an earpiece, like basically regurgitating talking points from an earpiece that everybody suspects because his brain's turned to mush. No, right. That is the one thing that is the most authentic about him, is the ability to speak about his family and his love for his children. Did this freeze?
No, you're fine. It didn't freeze.
Wait, Jay, are you going to respond?
Well, yeah, because I'm still going to say that I don't see that his speech today had any positive effect to the situation that happened in Afghanistan. And he did not take any blame for what was happening in Afghanistan, and he did not show any ounce of leadership in my mind. The issue that is happening right now, and I think people like to take it to the argument being, should we stay in there or be out of there? That argument is not what should be had right now. The argument that should be had right now is how we did it, who lied about what was going on, who lied about like this was not going to happen, and why we had to take 3,000 troops out overnight and send 10,000 troops back in order to get the evacuation done. So yeah, we did the withdrawal. Yeah, we're taking troops out, but why are we sending so much more in right now? Because of how wrong, how botched, and all the lying that has been happening through the Biden administration and the people surrounding this whole withdrawal. And if we don't get into those answers or ask those type of questions, I think we're doing a disservice. I think having the argument of withdrawal is just a distraction on the real issue that's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think there have been a lot of, and Batya, you might agree with this particular. You might fall into this crowd about the goal of withdrawal from Afghanistan far supersedes any of the other outcomes from it. So like this, but well, I mean, in my view, a very poorly executed and botched withdrawal. You're probably more of the belief that this is actually still a good thing, regardless of how many people kind of get harmed in the process, right?
You're like, regardless of all of the body count.
Yeah,
yeah.
Right. It's like what it's Suicide Squad. It's like John Cena in his only good role since he came out in favor of the Chinese Communist Party as the peacemaker. He's like, I love peace. I don't care how many men, women, and children have to die to get it.
No, I mean, look, could this have been done better? Probably, like there are things that I don't yet fully understand that I would like to understand. I think, but I'll give you an example of something that, like I would like to hear what you think about this. Okay. That horrific image of the child we found out, the 15-year-old soccer player who fell off the plane, who tied himself to the plane that first day, tied himself to the plane and then fell to his death, right? Like horrific, just horrific. I mean, no words, right? So that was in a moment where like the media was in this like hysteria, like look at all these people fleeing for their lives from the Taliban who are coming to murder them, right? Like that kid, I think, was a really good example of why that was false. Like, he had nothing to fear from the Taliban. He was a 15-year-old soccer star, right? Like, what did he have to fear from the Taliban? And I don't say that to disrespect his memory, like, God forbid. I really, really, really horrific, like, way to die. And yeah, like, whoever was responsible for that eventuality happening, somebody should, pay with their job for that, right? Like, that is something that could have been avoided. But at the same time, how could the Biden administration have known that a 15-year-old soccer star would be among this like throng of people, trying to get on these planes? And at the same time, I also feel like, in any country like Afghanistan, if you had humongous planes that were saying, actually, we're going to take 20,000 of you to live in America, like, of course you would have a stampede of people hoping to get through the cracks and get on that plane. Like, that's just like human nature. Like, I don't think a lot of those people were acting out of fear. I think they were acting very rationally. Like, and the media very much missed that, I think, and cast this very much as like in a way that like most benefited the war machine story. And that's why I have skepticism about this whole, the way they did it. Like, I don't know that how could the Biden administration have known that? Like, that's the kind of thing that I don't know if you could have foreseen, that there would have been just like so many people who were like not even known to the administration, who would have been behaving actually very reasonably and trying to get to America in the way that any normal person living in a third world country would be. So, for example, that's something that I think like, I mean, I know I'm sort of contradicting myself, because I'm saying on the one hand, they were behaving very reasonably. On the other hand, I don't know how the Biden administration could have foreseen that. We know for a fact that Stephen Miller would bring up in a very racist way in meetings these special visas and try to slow down the process, and that he convinced Trump to slow down the process and gum up the works and reject a lot of people. So that's like been sort of reported by Mike Pence's staff. So that is a shanda. That is like horrifying and horrific. And that should have been the first thing the Biden administration put their attention to when they, came in and decided that they were going to not scuttle this deal. And I don't know why they didn't do that. Like that. Yes, there were things that went wrong that could have gone better. But overall, I think this was always going to be very, very, very ugly. And I mean, I think withdrawing from a war that you have completely lost and botched for 20 years, like, I don't know. I think that you guys are saying I'm distracting from the real question by saying by acting like the question is whether we should be there or not, when the question is the botched thing, the botched withdrawal. And I feel a little bit like the opposite, like that there's this kind of narrative, like as though there was some ideal version of withdrawing. Like, why didn't they withdraw the civilians before they withdrew the troops? Well, we know that since March, the State Department has been reaching out to American citizens saying, please leave. Please leave. Like, we will pay to repatriate you. Now, the fact that they were doing that while President Biden was saying like everything is fine there's a tension there, right? Like maybe Biden was lying. Maybe he was right to lie about this. I don't know. It seems to me very obvious that the minute you start trying to get 20,000 people out of a country, the Taliban would have immediately done this, but 3 months earlier. Like, I mean, they were obviously very ready to do this, right? Maybe the Biden administration knew that and they were trying to avoid this. I don't know. Like, I definitely think there should be an investigation. I definitely want more answers. But the idea that there was some clean way to do this, I just think, to me, that's a distraction from the larger question of like.
So let me just push back on that, because I get what you're saying. How could the Biden administration have foreseen it being this disastrous? Maybe they did, but then you have the President Biden et al. Coming out and saying this was all part of the plan. Right. And that completely undermines everything they said. How could this have gone any differently? We couldn't have done this any differently. This was all part of the plan. It starts to, it doesn't sit well with a lot of people, because it seems inherently contradictory. I mean, a lot of people, I think a lot of people stated that, and Jay, you probably have heard this too, that, you put a plane on the tarmac and say this plane's going to America, it's going to fill up in like 30 seconds. I mean, we saw a video of it. Like, yes, people, if there is an opportunity to come to the United States, I'd say like 10 out of 10 people are going to take that chance and give it a go. Now, look, the Taliban fell in 2001 when the United States invaded after like what, 2 weeks, maybe less than that.
It was 6 days.
Yeah, 6 days. Yeah, something like that. Somewhere between 6 to 9 days. And basically what happened from there, I mean, if before that, I was living in Pakistan when the Taliban was ruling Afghanistan.
Oh, wow.
Almost the entire time.
Whoa, what was that
I didn't
like?
know. Well, I wasn't living in Afghanistan, but I mean, I did write about on 9/11. I want to say 4 years ago, how the Taliban put a bounty on all American heads in coordination with Al Qaeda in both Afghanistan and Pakistan,
Whoa.
and so we had to get the hell out of Dodge. So within 10 days after 9/11, my family was back and resettled in the United States. It was obviously very crazy, very hectic, and of course, with the new security measures. It took way longer than it should ever take to fly back, but that's just because of these new security measures that they put in place. Now, I have a lot of empathy for the Afghan people. I don't know why anyone will want to live under the Taliban rule. I don't think that look, they have. Jay and I did a bit in the previous episode about how this is the new and improved Taliban, and Jay basically dressed up in
and as a trans Taliban press secretary.
Yeah. So and I know what you're thinking, and
it was a good color.
I too have no words for that.
I gotta watch that.
That being said, I know that the Taliban is trying to say, oh, we're gonna try to tackle climate change. We're gonna tell people in the streets if they're doing something wrong, we're not going to beat them. We're going to just pressure them to not do that. Meanwhile, why they said they would persuade them. Meanwhile, they're just beating the shit out of them if they're wearing showing an ankle or they show that they're wearing jeans under their burqa. Everything that I don't trust a single word that they're saying. But Jay, how is it possible that we come to the point where the Biden administration and the United States at large, the U.S. military, all the U.S. civilians are still there in Afghanistan. The Afghan civilians are trying to leave. How is it possible that we're now beholden to the good graces of the Taliban to give these people safe passage to the airport to get out of the country?
Because there was a complete lack of actual planning to happen. I mean, the Taliban, the reason why people want to leave the rule of the Taliban is because the Taliban are 150 years in the past. That's their mentality. That's their thinking. They're barbarians with iPhones and barbarians with now American grade weaponry. The reason why it happened the way that it did is because there are reports coming out from the State Department and stuff where they were saying that this is going to go horribly, and they were not listened to. Now, how truthful these are, because these are sources that other people are using and stuff. I mean, we knew from the Trump administration that sources aren't always that accurate or really what you want to be listening to. Sometimes it's just a disgruntled politician leaking something because he wants to backstab and stuff. So it's all disgusting politics. But I do honestly think that that they didn't want to hear the people warning them about what was going to happen with the Taliban. The report from the New York Times about how they took all the support away from the Afghan army overnight, completely took it away from them. So they were actually acting blind into how to function. Just goes to show that, I mean, either this is exactly going as planned and they wanted to give the country completely over to the Taliban, or they did no planning whatsoever over this, and now they are trying to clean up their mess. Those are the two possibilities in my mind. Yeah. Because
Batya,
sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're going to say.
I was going to say the Afghan government, it was a government for what, 15 years since after this 20-year long war. We want to say it's 20 years. It stopped being a war once Afghanistan had the government that was installed under after we took the Taliban out. It stopped being a war. It was more of a security presence in my mind than it was an actual full out war. But
yeah, it was an occupation.
It was not an occupation. I wouldn't say occupation. I would say it was more as helping a buddy out.
In an occupied way.
It's not an occupied. We weren't really building anything. We were trying to build up their army.
Yeah, but by what right? Like, by what right? You know, can I just say something? Like, you guys are gonna hate this because it's like very like woke feminazi, but like this whole question of like, oh, we are now existing at the grace of the Taliban. We are so ashamed as men. This is so unmacho. Like, we have to ask their permission. Oh, who is the top dog here? It's the Taliban now. Like, it's just so weird to me. I just don't get that at all. Like, yeah, you're in a country that like, it's sovereign. It's like it's a sovereign nation and you have no legitimacy to be there. Like, they have more legitimacy to be there than we do. And like, we're trying to leave. So it's like, yeah, we need their help to get out of there. And they actually want us to get out. So it's like our interests are actually aligned. Like, they did not want this ISIS-K thing to happen, right? Like, our interests are totally aligned. They want us out and we want to get out. So it's like the idea that this is like a pissing contest. Like, I don't relate to that at all. But I see a lot of like men folk on the Twitters, like being like, oh, we need to ask the Taliban's permission. This is so embarrassing. America is so humiliated on the world stage. Like, who cares? Like, it only matters what we think about America. Like, who cares what anybody else thinks about us? I love that.
Oh no, I get what you're saying. You know, why should we give a shit about what any country thinks about the United States? We're America. At the same time, we should not be relying on the good graces of anybody. Okay, we're the United States of fucking America. Okay, if we, you know, basically,
we're not okay. Siraj, we're not relying on them to not kill our civilians, right? We're relying on them for a mission to get people that we want to help out. Like, it's not the same thing, right? It's like, it's not like we're relying on them to protect us. It's like, it's their country, and by their good graces, we are trying to take people out of the country that they now are the government of.
They're the same people that want to kill everyone that had worked with us.
And they have the biometrics for that too, which is actually absolutely disgusting. The thing is like, you want to legitimize the Taliban. That's the same thing as legitimizing Al-Qaeda. Same thing as legitimizing ISIS. The thing that you have to understand is that if you want to say that Afghanistan is Taliban's country, then we need to take everyone who ever helped us out of there.
So you believe in regime change. You believe that like the United States can go into countries where we don't like the government and just change it? You think that's legit?
I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying I will not want to see or do any type of deals or even have the Taliban on the international stage. If the UN recognizes the Taliban, or if anyone on the international stage recognizes the Taliban, it is an absolute disgrace.
But that,
and I'm not talking about a regime change or anything like that. I'm just talking about that these are the worst people ever. Why aren't we legitimizing North Korea? Or the North Korean government? Why don't we legitimize them? They're great. They're killing in the millions. The famine is in the millions. What you need to understand about the Taliban is they will take people out from their homes and kill them. They will shoot people in the head for singing a song while walking down the street. This is what they're going to be dealing with. And we just fed Afghans to them, completely fed it to them. And this is what I mean by saying, yes, not only do they need their jobs taken away from them, this needs even worse. And it's showcasing that we don't give a shit about our allies whatsoever.
Just want to add this quick point, and that's just because, look, when it comes to the Taliban, I am not in favor of regime change, but I wasn't really a decision maker when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan to begin with. I was 14 years old when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan. So we have to make the best of a bad situation, right? So we're already in Afghanistan. What do we do then? If we're going to be staying in Afghanistan and ensuring that they can go after Al-Qaeda and any enablers of Al-Qaeda, i.e. the Taliban, to hold them accountable for the single worst terrorist attack on American soil in the September 11th terrorist attacks. If they had just ended it at taking out the Taliban and taking out Al-Qaeda, sure, and didn't even worry about building up another government, then the Taliban likely would have come back in and just assumed power, kind of like how ISIS sort of filled that vacuum in Iraq after the United States withdrew from there. That being said, I mean, look, I don't think America's primary mission should be going into other countries and changing their governments, although that has basically been their primary objective basically since World War II and the Cold War. And unfortunately, there's not like very little I can do to change that. All I can say is that if they are going to get into that fight, they should at least do it right and not create a mess like we're seeing right now. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it does make sense. Like once you're in there, you have a responsibility to kind of complete the mission. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, you have to make the best of a bad situation, and we could Tuesday morning quarterback this entire thing to next week. But the fact of the matter is, we were there, and while yes, I want troops withdrawn from Afghanistan, the tens of thousands or however many thousands of Americans who died trying to fight in Afghanistan, as well as the tens of thousands of Afghan soldiers and civilians who have also lost their lives to terrorism and to groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. It is at least in our best interest to at least see that through. Because
how would you know when you were done? Like, what does see that through mean? Like, how would you know when to stop?
That's a great question, because once you get into and I see that other side of the sword. I see the other side of the debate, because you look at when you get into like Manchuria, the Japanese Empire basically expanding. Once they started in Manchuria, they basically couldn't stop until basically the United States dropped the atomic bombs on them. So I don't know all the answers to this. Do I think I know what it means to see it through? I wish I knew what the answer was to that. But at the same time, I think it is even more pointless to even have gone into Afghanistan if it ends up the way it has right now.
But that's kind of like saying, okay, look, you guys are going to hate this also because it's super woke, but like, I support reparations, and like often I'll get into debates with conservatives and they'll be like, well, I would have supported it in 1865, but I don't support it now. And I feel like saying that's the argument against something is not that it was the right thing to do in the past, but we didn't do it, and so it's the wrong thing to do now. And I feel similarly about that. Like you're saying, like, well, it was maybe like the wrong move, but now we're here, so we might as well make the best of it. But it's like, yeah, we made a huge mistake, and some president was going to have to fall on their sword and be like, I will no longer be the one who authorizes this mistake every single day. I'm going to stop authorizing it. And this is what that looks like. And I think that was very brave. And I think to me, you're like, well, I don't know what it would look like for it to be over. But to me, that's exactly the point, is like, exactly. Like, how do we know when we're done? Right? Like, clearly the government we thought we had built was never there in the first place. It's kind of what I was trying to say about women having rights. Like, there was nothing that was actually there. It was all ephemeral. It was all this like sandcastle. So it was going to depend on our troops, on our boys and girls, and on our tax dollars that could be going to fight, like, 93,000 people who died of drug overdoses this year who need our help. Like, here, our neighbors, like down the street, there's like public housing, and the children are in 8th grade and they can't read. Like, there's like, I feel like there's so many wars that we should be fighting here that we know
No,
what
I agree
success
with
would
you.
look like. And I thought that
I
whole,
agree with you that we should focus more of our energy here at home than on regime change abroad. And I think there are a lot of Americans who agree with that point.
And if we're going to be doing regime change, like there's actually a genocide happening like on this planet right now that nobody seems to care about. Like, and it's like, so to me, it's like, is this really like,
You mean China, right?
Yeah. I mean, China, which I'm sure you guys agree with me about, but
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
I mean,
so like, you know, I mean, if we're going to do that, let's sit down and make a list of all of the worst offenders. And to me, genocide is the top one. There's one happening in China. Fine. Let's go. I'm ready. You know, I'm the descendant of Holocaust survivors. Like that's my number one issue. Let's go. You know, I'm ready. But like, it's just like, if we're like, how do you know which ones to fight? And I feel like it's like, okay, I'm all over the place now, but it's sort of a similar thing with the border, where it's like you have this kind of open borders policy now that's like taking over the left and the Democratic Party. And it's like, there are people actually further away who can't just walk across the border, whose lives are actually worse than people in South America and Central America, who are actually waiting for visas, you know, like, so if we are going to have values, like we should actually like come up with a plan and say like, okay, what are our values, and then stick to them. Whereas to me, that's sort of the opposite of what you were saying, Siraj, where it's like, well, we're here anyway. Might as well just stick it out, you know?
well, I mean, I'm one of those people. Look, in many ways, I'm a perfectionist, and once I get myself into a bad situation, you know, what's that old saying? Like, if you find yourself in hell, keep going. Like that's kind of how I view life. And Jay, jump in here. I mean, like, what, Jay, in your view, what is like the end game there?
Yeah.
Like, what is the end goal that we should have gone into with Afghanistan? If it wasn't this, what should have been?
And how would you know it when you saw it?
Well, that would be difficult, but to actually see when you see something like that, being able to know for sure that you're good to get out. But I mean, look, we went in to destroy Al Qaeda and the Taliban. We didn't do it, and now they're back in power. Both Al Qaeda and the Taliban are back in power. So going into the first place is a failure right now, and the only reason why it's a failure, the only true reason why you want to say that we lost the war is lost, the thing is a failure, is because of what's happening right now, is because it's a failure. I think we should have continued to support the Afghan government as it was in there. And that is the way that we could have seen it happen. I mean, the reason why, we have troops and we have support for other countries in so many different places. And maybe we could have gotten the international, we pay billions of dollars to NATO, to the UN, and all of these garbage institutions that don't like to move their weight around into anything.
Right.
I mean, you have like you said, you have what's happening in China. The genocide is happening in China. Why aren't we doing anything? Because we have a stupid organization like the UN that actually houses China as a human rights council.
Right.
And they put Russia on it and stuff. And now you're going to see the Taliban, like Iran and Saudi Arabia, become like women rights council members on those seats of these organizations. So yeah, if you want to talk about like, let's help ourselves here at home, let's get rid of all of these institutions and stuff too that we waste our money on. I mean, government is nothing but the biggest waste of money. And the more we're going to feed it, the worse people are going to be off. I mean, we've been feeding these.
And this is the episode. And this is the episode we learned that Jay is a full-on anarchist.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been feeding these communities. I mean, you want to talk about reparations and stuff. We've been feeding these communities. And I'm talking about communities, not just on race, but I'm talking about communities all over the country. In inner cities, we've been feeding them trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars, and we're not seeing any kind of results out of it. We're seeing worse people doing worse in school. We're seeing people doing worse on the streets. We're seeing higher rates of homelessness happening. So when is that going to be enough? How many trillions of dollars? How many trillions of dollars?
Yeah,
we see like that national building here in the United States.
There is a legitimate issue about like government throwing money at a problem, expecting the money to fix it, and it not being fixed. And this is the problem with a lot of government subsidies in general, is that if you continue rewarding some of these public entities, Department of Education, these local city, these local local governments, state and local governments with federal money, taxpayer dollars, and there's no like merit-based like interest in keeping that money. They just get more and more taxpayer money, and things never change. There's no incentive to try to change those systems or make people more successful, help them find housing, help them get a degree, help them find a job, help them build a family. You get the gist. Obviously, we've thrown like $2 trillion at Afghanistan, and the problem still hasn't fixed. Maybe by that logic, we Biden did the right thing by getting us all out of Afghanistan. And maybe Batya has a point about how there wasn't another way to be getting it done. But in spite of that, there still is room for the imagination, given what the Biden administration has said publicly through President Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, or even White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, that this was always part of the plan. And I think Clarissa Ward said it best: if they call this success, a success, what is failure?
Okay, so first of all, I'm a socialist, so Mujahed, we're gonna have to fight this out because
Absolutely.
Wait, whoa, Batya, why are you friends with us if you're? I'm just kidding.
I used to defend Trump for lying, and yeah, I think Biden is lying about a lot of stuff, but I think all presidents lie, and I think that I don't think that that's like, people are acting like that's some sort of like moral strategic failure. Like, I don't know, because sometimes I think it's his job to lie. It's our job to give him a hard time about it, to be like, why are you lying? What you lying about? What actually happened? Maybe you mishandled this to such an extent that you deserve censure of some kind. Like, but I don't know that like it's not a president's job to sometimes lie about stuff. Like when Trump said that he was like lying about, he would later admit that he lied all the time. He couldn't help himself. But I just like, it's like his job is to be a statesman and to make hard decisions and to tell, to try to influence public opinion to support those decisions or whatever. And it's the press's job to sort of find out if he's telling the truth or not. But yeah, it seems to me pretty clear that they are being dishonest about what exactly is happening. Yeah. But I don't know that I fault them for that. I mean, I think I would probably do the same thing in their shoes.
Lie? In their,
yeah.
Like you would lie about the situation at hand?
I think, okay, I think I can even get you guys to admit that there's no way that Biden purposely put the lives of American troops in danger. Can we all
I don't
agree
think
on
any
that?
president intends for that to happen.
Right. But Mujahed, can you?
I can't. The reason why I can't is because politicians do, and they do all the time.
But do you think Biden purposely did it?
I do. For a nice top picture for himself as we get closer to 9/11. I do.
But
I don't think he meant for like as much of the destruction that's happening, but you can tell he doesn't give a shit. I honestly, you can see him and you can tell he doesn't give a shit.
I think he only ran for president because it was his dying son's wish, and I think that he thought to him. I think you could to me, it's like, and this is so sad because I can so see it in his face that like every minute of every day he's asking himself like, what would Bo want me to do right now? This is what he would want, and that's where his confidence comes from to stand up to all of this. I so see it so differently, but I think he wanted that photo op, but I don't know that he wanted it like for himself. I think that he. Okay, now I am simping. Like now I obviously
you are. You're like you're very, 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 very much.
I'm not even gonna say what I was gonna say because
I was about to say you're simping worse. You're simping worse than Siraj does with Jen Rubin.
Whoa, Jay, you keep her name out your mouth, Jay.
No, but I do feel that Biden is representing the working class in a way that, no president has since Donald Trump. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, like that's actually true. But like he has restored to Democrats like the desire to speak to people who are not part of the credentialed class. And I think if the war in Afghanistan teaches us anything, it's how stupid and wrong the experts are, and how like messed up it is that we rely on them because they've proven. This is, by the way, not just the war in Afghanistan, COVID, right? Like how much has COVID proven to us that the whole expert class is full of what? Like just totally full of it.
Say
right?
You can say it. You can say it. You can
say it. In fact,
It's
that
fine.
actually would help. That would help you. That would help you to just say it straight up. Let's
Just
go.
say it. Let's
hear
hear
it.
it.
I'm trying to clean up my act,
No, Batya. No holds barred in the Habibi Power Hour. You say what comes to mind. No
Okay,
filter.
but wait, but Habibis, let me ask you honestly. You guys can see it when it comes to COVID, right? That the expert class is just like totally wrong about everything. But how come why are you all simping for the like military industrial complex?
No.
That's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. That's a total false argument to place into what we're talking about. Wanting to withdraw and saying that the way they're withdrawing is wrong is not simping for the military.
So Mujahed, you want to withdraw. You support withdrawal. You support withdrawal?
Hold on.
Yeah.
You know who's actually benefiting the military industrial complex? What Biden is doing by sending another 10,000 troops back into Afghanistan. We were just getting 3,000 of them out. Now we have to send more in. We have to get more equipment. We have to buy more equipment because we lost $80 billion of it to the Taliban. So we have to get more equipment and spend more money in the military industrial complex for this botched withdrawal. And we're the ones who are simping for or not simping, but like, I know, but like saying that's where it doesn't make sense because we're saying the way you're withdrawing, you could have done it right. You could have withdrawn properly. You could have used the equipment that was there for you. You had the airport just, what was it, like 15 miles north, where it has multiple runways, where it's actually safeguarded, where it's actually easier to get people into and out of instead of using the Kabul airport. Like none of this stuff.
Well, why do you think they didn't do it? Why do you think they made these decisions?
Because they rushed it. They wanted it to happen as quickly and they're incompetent. Actually, it's because the general is reading about white rage instead of actually doing his fucking job.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and this is the piggyback on what Jay's saying. Exactly what they basically did everything in reverse when it came to withdrawal. While the State Department probably put out warnings to the civilian population to leave Afghanistan in March, clearly those didn't work. So instead of trying to ramp everything up to 11 by saying, oh, the Taliban is going to take over, all of you pack your shit and let's get out of here, and everybody's cramming to try to get onto a C-17, they didn't even consider taking at least, if not the equipment out of Afghanistan, at least not in the Taliban's hands. And when it came to at least getting as many people as they could get out, look, Joe Biden, he had a May 1st deadline, or at least Donald Trump, he agreed to a May 1st deadline through that initial deal with the Taliban in February 2020. Joe Biden pushed it back to August 31st. We still had the opportunity, even in those 3 months, the Taliban was not killing American service members or U.S. civilians that we at least has been reported. He couldn't have probably acted with a little bit more sensitivity to try to get as many of our people out with a little bit more urgency. I mean, I understand that he's the president, he's got to remain calm.
I mean, he got 90,000 people out. Like, that's a lot of people.
But how many people did he leave behind?
It's, first of all, U.S. citizens, we know it's U.S. citizens, there will probably be very, very, very few, and even fewer who actually wanted to leave. We know that they've gotten all of them except between 500 and 1,000, and they're in touch with another 500. And of the 500 who are remaining, they're not even sure if they're all there. So U.S. citizens, it will probably be like very close to zero who they leave behind. In terms of the people who have helped us, I mean, we got out 90,000. How many more do you want? Like, when will the number have been enough? I feel like there's this mission creep, and it's like it keeps, like, they keep moving the goalposts. Like,
it's every American who wants to get out.
That's
already, they know exactly how many are left, and they're in touch with them. Like, that's already goal,
like, never goalpost movement is that every American citizen is out of there. That's the goal, and that's always the goal.
Okay,
and the 90,
I
think the 90,000 was not just by us. That's not just the United States. It's also
the vast majority was us.
I think it was like 50,000 was us. But like you said, when you put a thing on the tarmac and you say, let's go, everybody, you're going to have everyone rush to it and leave. And right now, like, how are we saying that people wanted to stay there, or Afghanis who helped us wanted to stay there, when we see how desperate they are right now fighting to get into the plane? Why is it that we're seeing all of that desperateness when we're saying some people wanted to stay behind, when we're saying that nobody wanted to fight for their country, when we're saying, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, none of that type of argument makes zero sense to me, because of the desperation we're seeing right now and how dire the situation has turned out. So that I can't see that argument as winning. And we had 100,000, 90,000 people get out. How many of them were actual service people of the Afghan service people that helped the United States? Out of those 90,000 people, how many of them were they? How many of them were promised?
What do you mean? They didn't just let anybody on those planes. I mean, I think probably the majority of them had special visas. I mean, they were very selective about who they allowed out. I'm thinking to myself, like, I have so many things I could say, but none of them will convince you. And I feel so, like, distraught by that I don't know how to.
No, there's not. Look, Batya, we are largely in agreement with the idea that pulling out of Afghanistan was the right move. It is simply the difference of how we pulled out.
But you said you will be satisfied if every U.S. citizen is flown out, right?
But we already had deaths, so it's not going to be satisfying.
So
it's already a disaster.
Never.
I mean,
it's a disaster from start to finish. This will never be as satisfying.
You said you're not moving the goalpost because you want just the U.S. citizens, right?
Well, when they're alive and breathing, I think that's
when they're coming home in coffins. When they're coming home in coffins, then it's obviously a different situation.
So Anthony Blinken said, oh shoot, sorry, my cat is.
Oh my goodness! I can't believe you brought a cat, and I don't have.
I know.
I
felt I was losing the argument. I had to bring the reinforcements. She's getting mixed up and stuff. No, I mean, so Anthony Blinken said yesterday that there were 6,000 American citizens that they were aware of. Of course, the U.S. doesn't track the motion of citizens, right? So can't be 100% sure
unless we're droning them.
Right, exactly. So what they were aware of is that there were 6,000 registered U.S. citizens. Of the 6,000, 4,500 had already been evacuated. They were in touch with 1,000 more who were on their way to the airport or either being in the midst of being evacuated and then there were 500 left who they were trying to get in touch with, trying to find, but every single U.S. citizen who wanted to be evacuated was going to be evacuated. So it is, but my point that I want to make is, like, everybody has been acting for 2 weeks as though, like, it's a foregone conclusion that all those people were already murdered, instead of, like, saying the reasonable thing, which is it's just too soon to tell. Like, yes, next week when every U.S. troop is gone, we will be able to say whether they left people behind. But, like, it is just too soon to tell because the mission is not completed.
The mission's not completed, but I can just tell you, we're way past halftime. We're entering the fourth quarter, and it's not going well.
Great.
Not
So
going
you'll
well
have me
at all.
back on next week and make me eat my words.
Batya,
There will
I
be
will.
tweets.
Batya,
There will be
if
tweets.
there was anything I like doing, it is dunking on lips. So
Absolutely. It's gonna. I mean,
I'm here for it.
when we have.
So- yeah,
No,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Jay. No,
No,
you go. No.
I was just gonna say it's good. Like it's easy to see what's going on and also predict what's going to happen because I think you put too much faith in the Taliban in terms of like them actually holding their word or being good people.
No, it's not faith.
And-
it's not
and-
faith.
I think by next week we're going to see the worst hostage situation that we've ever seen, and in not only terms of like American citizens being held hostage. I'm also going to say how we're going to hear reports and see videos of Afghans that helped us, and how horrific they're going to be torn limb to limb, and not just them, but their family members too.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, we will see. I really hope that I'm right and you're wrong. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
But before you go, I'm just kidding. We're not going to make you take shahada. It's too early. I was just going to say, at the very least, if we can't turn you into one of us, we can at least turn you into a Muslim. But maybe we'll get you another time. We'll get you taking shahada over Twitter video or something like that. Before we let you go, Batya, because we're coming up, we're almost running out of time. We'll end on something happy, and that is, what's your cat's name?
Oh, my cat's name is Lucy.
Lucy.
Nice.
Very nice.
I actually had a cat named Lucy.
Really?
I'm not even joking. I had a cat named Lucy when I was living in
Oh my gosh.
when I was living in the UAE in Abu Dhabi. All I had were cats growing up, and then I
Jay
lived
is a cat lady.
a couple of cats. I am. I had a couple of cats when I was living alone in Dubai, and a couple of cats in Lebanon as well.
Man,
Wow.
look at Jay. Jay was swimming in pussy back then.
I was compensating for something.
You are. What is it with people naming their cats like really old lady people names? Lucy, really?
She's named after a character in a book that I was reading right when we got her. So
Which one is that? Was that what's it called? God damn it.
it's a very embarrassing old lady book. But my name is
yeah.
a very old lady name in Hebrew. Like if you go to Israel, like all of the Batyas are like little old ladies, you know? It's a very like old fashioned name.
Right, and if you
Wow.
if you go overseas to see like who's named Mujahed and stuff, like they usually fly planes into buildings. Let's just say that. It's a very old name.
And for me, Siraj, you never have to know my last name because there's literally there's only like one here in the United States.
Does it mean something? Does Siraj mean something?
Yeah. Oh. So here's a great story. So Siraj means light, and it goes with my middle name. It goes with my middle name, Al-Nabi, which means the prophet. So it's light of the prophet. But when I was in college, I took Arabic, and my old white Arab professor who had lived in the Middle East and lived in Jordan, and he was fluent in Arabic, really nice guy. Leon Blosser was his name. I'm not sure if he's still around anymore because this is over 15 years ago. He insisted that my name meant lamp. So not like a genie lamp, not like something exotic, like literally a fucking lamp. Okay. So I then get roasted on my 30th birthday by my boy, one of my boys, Ryan Gerdusky, who's been on the show before. And he comes out with a joke that says, when Siraj was born, his mom, he was a 10-pound, 8-ounce baby, which is true. I was an elephant child. He came out, and his mom was so exhausted that she just looked at the very first thing that she could see in the room and just named him that. So it's like, oh no, just name a lamp. It'll go great with his sister and brother, couch cushion and laundromat. Like it's just that level of craziness. And so that's basically been my life. It's just one large troll. So
It still goes till today.
yeah. Ghosted today. And the Habibis remind me of that every single day. I think it was earlier today in which someone was trying to dunk on me, and then one of the Habibis said was defending me, and then only we get to talk to the dickhead like that. The dickhead referring to me. And it took me a second, like, did he actually just call me a dickhead? And he's literally defending me and calling me a dickhead in the same tweet. That is like the level of dedication of the Habibis, and I appreciate the love.
It's because we're family.
It's because we're family. So Batya, for anyone who wants to follow you on Twitter, it's at @Ungar-Sargon. Is that right?
True enough.
And your new book coming out is woke media. Sorry, I already forgot.
No, don't even tell them, because like after this hour, they're just gonna go and give me 1-star reviews. So like, let's just spare me the.
It's okay. No. Batya, what we'll do is I'll hook you up with the people over at the Young Turks, and then get you on what's it called, on Breaking Points and the Rogan. Get you on all this. We'll get you on Majority Report. And then we'll get you on MSNBC. We'll get you on CNN. And those reviews will get right back to 5 stars. You'll be fine.
Yes.
Inshallah. So Batya, thank you so much again for joining us.
Oh my God, thank you
so
much, you guys. This was so fun.
So for the Habibi Bros, I'm Siraj Hashmi.
I'm Jay Kobbe.
And we'll see you guys next time on Habibi Power Hour. Have a good night. Peace, y'all. Masalama.